you do. Okay, let's get right to it. Let's go to the history of Chanukah. After the touching upon the history, really just touching upon it, we'll speak of some of the laws and customs and the reasoning behind them, and then we'll speak about how Chanukah could teach us about life altogether. 3 life lessons that I think everyone needs to take from Chanukah if we want to celebrate this special festival meaningfully. I will start by saying that Chanukah is one of the more special holidays in the Jewish holiday, to the point that the Talmud says that when the Mashiach will come, when the Messiah will come, all of the festivals will be annulled, except for 2, Chanukah and Purim, because they both share a message that is truly everlasting, that will last even in the times of the Messiah. The other festivals may share a message that is temporary. This message of Chanukah, as well as the message of Purim, is everlasting. So what is Chanukah all about? Let's go to the history. Does anyone want to read the first paragraph right here? This is really a very short summary of the history of the Jews. Please, Sue, go for it.
The story of Chanukah takes us back to the year 164 BC. Some 150 years before the birth of Christianity, 2 centuries before the destruction of the Second Temple, when the Syrian ruler
Antiochus, right. By the way, that's a Greek name, so I'm not even sure we're pronouncing it, right? Greek. Does anyone speak Greek here? No? Okay, so then you'll know.
He was determined to impose his values on the Jewish people. He forbade the practice of Judaism, set up a statue of Zeus in the temple, and systematically desecrated Jerusalem's holy sites. Jews who were caught practicing Judaism were tortured to death. This was tyranny on a grand scale. Sadly, he was helped in his and indeed by 2 Jewish high priests, Jason and Menelaus, who assisted in turning the people into a Greek house of worship. To put it into historical perspective, at Antiochus defeated, Judaism would have died. Its daughter religions, Christianity and Islam, would have never participated. A small group of Jews led by the Holy priest that they made and his sons rose in revolt. They fought a brilliant campaign, and within 3 years they had recaptured Jerusalem, removed that religious objects from the temple, and restored Jewish autonomy. It was, as you say, in the month of prayers, a victory for the weak against the strong, and the few against the many. Religious liberty was established, and the temple was rededicated.
Right. Okay. So this is a very, very brief summary, but I will add to this and say that if you think about Jewish history, we really have had 2 types of enemies. One type of enemy went after our body. So, for example, Adolf Hitler wanted all Jews killed, and so did Haman of Purim, for example, or so do some terrorists today. They want Jews to be no more, physically, spiritually, emotionally, on all levels. Then we've had enemies like the Greeks. They didn't necessarily want to kill us. They didn't want to get rid of the Jewish body. They didn't want to get rid of the Jewish soul, of what the Jewish values are, of the spirit of Judaism. And therefore, they issued decrees that went directly against the soul of being Jewish, not the physical existence of being Jewish. And they did so in just horrific ways. I won't tell you, I won't go into details, I don't want you to have nightmares. Or maybe just to share with you a glimpse. I hope that won't give you a nightmare. But of how they enforced their decrees. The decrees again that went against the soul of being Jewish, which means first and foremost the Torah and the commandments. So the commandment, for example, is to observe the Shabbat. Any Jew that is caught observing the Shabbat was sentenced to death. The commandment is to keep Shabbat, to keep kosher. Sorry, any Jew that was caught keeping kosher was sentenced to death. The commandment is to circumcise our baby boys. Those who were caught circumcising baby boys, this is what they would do to them. They would take the baby boy who was circumcised. I'm actually not sure whether it's or not, but if you have, I mean, the comments share so who am I not to share it, but they would take those babies, tie them to the backs of their mothers, and then slice them into 2. But that's how horrific, that's how torturous, that's how just unfathomably disgusting they were. And that was all led by Antiochus V. Unfortunately, Jews collaborated with him, as it was throughout history. Some Jews collaborated with Hitler. Not too many, but some Jews also collaborated with Haman, and some Jews also collaborated with the Greeks. Unfortunately, though, during the time of the Greeks, during these times, 164 BCE, most of the Jews apparently collaborated with the Greeks, and they were known as the Hellenistic Jews. So think about this in this context. What the Maccabees faced was a battle that was really impossible, because not only were they going after the Greeks and a mighty army, but they were also going against their own brothers and sisters. So just to put yourself for a second in the shoes of the Maccabees gives us a perspective that is overwhelming, to say the least. Yet the Maccabees had this resilience and this persistence, and they decided that we have to stand for truth, otherwise no one will. And thank God they did. Otherwise we wouldn't be here today. Ready? Nor would the Christians be here today, nor would the Muslims be here today, because they are the daughter religions of Judaism. Yeah. So the Greeks practiced the human body, and they very much also practiced the human mind. So they were therefore worshiping the complete wholesome human body. For example, bodies that were born defected were left to die, because the ultimate body for them to be worshipped was this perfect wholesome human body. And of course, they worshipped the vine. They were great philosophers like Socrates and Aristotle and so on. And they had much in common with Jewish wisdom too. But that's what they practiced in the temple of Zeus. And some of their other idols really represented those ideals, like the human body, or like money, like sex. It was a god for money, god for sex. I forget their name. But that's really what they practiced, that perfect human body and its pleasures and so on. Yes.
I have a question in regard to, if it's such an important, significant holiday, how come we don't have a Megillah Chanukah like Megillah Purim?
Oh, very good question. In fact, there is a book called Sefer HaMaccabim. There is a book like that.
But it's not in the Bible.
Because what Jackie is asking, it's a very good question. On Purim, we read the Megillah. On Tisha B'Av, Purim, where we celebrate the victory over Haman, right? On Tisha B'Av, where we mourn the destruction of the temple, of the temples, we have also the book of Lamentation. Why isn't there a book that we read on Chanukah that celebrates this victory, especially that it's so significant? Actually, there is a book like that. It's called Sefer HaMaccabim, the book of the Maccabees. But when the Mishnaic sages of 2,000 years ago, shortly after this, came together to really compose the Bible as we know it today, which means not just the 5 books of Moses, but also the books that came after, Joshua, Judges, Kings, and so on, Samuel, Kings, and so on. They excluded this book from the Bible. Why? Because they did not want to give the message to Jews worldwide and to the people worldwide that it is the might of our arms that ought to be celebrated, but rather the miracles of God and the spirit of the nation. The book of the Maccabees speaks too much of the physical victory, and therefore it wasn't included. But having said that, I do encourage everyone, as many do, to read the book of the Maccabees, especially on Chanukah. It's a beautiful way to celebrate Chanukah too.
So there is no connection with the temple, the third temple, the second temple. Because during Purim we had the temple, but during Chanukah, actually the opposite.
Yeah, no, during Chanukah we had the temple. That's when they came in the final temple. Yeah, Purim was in Persia. That's right. That's right. Exactly. All right. So this is the story. I don't want to dwell on it too much, but I do want to speak of some of the laws of custom, and then again, mainly go to the lessons for life. But yes, Mandy, did you have a question?
It's not mentioned. Right?
No, I mean, it's not mentioned in the Bible as we know it today, but again, it's mentioned. We have a book of the Maccabees that speaks of it. Yeah, exactly. You can find it. You can Google it, and you can even download it as a PDF. I've done that before, and you can read it. It's a good read that will teach you a lot about the story of Chanukah, and at the same time, teach you of the incredible courage of the Maccabees that we can each learn from for our daily life.
Be the teacher.
No, you don't. You can read it. You can be your teacher. Let the text be the teacher. Okay, but let's get to some of the laws and the customs, the reasoning behind them. There's a practical side to Chanukah, and again, then we'll get to the spirit of Chanukah and the lessons that we can take for life. So to differentiate between laws and custom, laws is what you should do, customs is what you can do. the law of Chanukah, the only law of Chanukah, is to light the menorah, or as it's more accurately called, the Chanukah. The menorah is a 7-branch candelabra. The Chanukah is an 8-branch candelabra. So we really like a Chanukah, not a menorah. The menorah is called menorah because that's the way the Torah calls it when it describes these utensils that were first in the tabernacle and then later in the temple. The menorah is one of those utensils. But really, what we learn on Chanukah is a Chanukah. Same as the menorah, just with an extra branch. So it's an 8-branch candelabra. But when we light the law of Chanukah, the only law of Chanukah is to light a Chanukah each and every night after sunset. Now, why do we do that? Because the message of Chanukah is to expel darkness, not by fighting with it, but by increasing the light. You can't expel darkness with sticks and stones, but you can expel darkness by increasing the light. Or as one of the great Jewish sages would say, a little bit of light dispels a lot of darkness. Sometimes that's all that is needed. And that's really one of the powerful messages of Chanukah that is really expressed by the only law of Chanukah. The rest, the latkes, the donut, all of this that we'll touch upon, those are customs. But what we can learn from Chanukah is that when we face challenges in life, sometimes instead of fighting them, as would be the initial reaction, psychology will teach you that for every challenge you have a fight or flight reaction, right? Well, Judaism doesn't believe in that approach, neither of those approaches. Judaism believes in really being that light. The only way we can fight challenges is by increasing the goodness in us, by focusing on all that is positive, and by ensuring that all that is positive is well established in our lives and even enhanced in our lives. Because the more we light the light, the less darkness we will have. So that's really the main message of Chanukah. And therefore, we light a menorah Chanukah for 8 nights. Each night we add an additional candle, also representing this idea that we can never be satisfied with the light that we lit yesterday, but every single day we have to increase in life. We can't ever rest on our laurels. We always have to add Mosifin B'Chodesh, the Lomo Redeem, and the words of the Talmud, we have to add in things of holiness, and God will never decrease. But anyway, so that's the law. The customs of Chanukah are many. Let's turn the page and we can read some of them. So I'm going to skim through them very quickly. One custom is to add the Hallel prayer that we do each and every day to offer our thanksgiving to God for this great miracle. Another custom, which is a favorite by all, is to eat donuts and latkes and oily fried stuff. Like Moroccans have their own type of donuts called sphinges, right? Sphinge.
My house, anybody know?
Sphinge.
It's a dog.
It's a type of donut that's very delicious.
It has no,
Sorry?
it has no calories.
No, it's 0 calories, of course, and it's vegan. Yeah, exactly. The gluten-free and so on. And yeah, but that's another custom. The reason we eat oily food on Chanukah is to remind us of the miracle of the oil, that when the Maccabees came to rededicate the temple, they only found, as we all know, a jar of oil, a sealed jar. They found many jars of oil. That many don't know. They found actually many jars. Many jars of oil were left wide open on the floors of the temple. But they were looking for one that was completely sealed with the stamp of the high priest. Why? Because for the menorah in the temple, you could only use a pure jar of oil. Opening a jar of oil will make it impure, especially if you don't know what happened to it, who touched it, how they used it. So that makes it impure. So they had many open jars of oil, but they couldn't use them because they were impure. So they had to find a jar of oil that was completely sealed, and they searched and finally they only found one. And instead of lasting for 1 day, it lasted for 8 days. So because of that miracle, we celebrate oil on Chanukah, and we eat a lot of oily food. Another custom of Chanukah is to play the dreidel, and that is because the Greeks had their own spies. Part of their army was a spy agency, and they would send spies to see if Jews were indeed practicing Judaism or not. And they were Jews who relentlessly practiced Judaism regardless of the decrees. One of the ways they practiced Judaism is by studying Torah. They would get in groups and study Torah because they knew, as we all know today, and as Jews have known for centuries, that education is key to everything. So they focused on education. There were groups who would get together and study. But those spies from time to time would come, and then they would see a Greek soldier, a Greek spy coming towards them. They would immediately hide the books, take out a dreidel, and start playing with it, so that when the Greek soldier comes, they can tell him, oh, no, we're just playing dreidel. Not studying anything, we're just playing dreidel. So that's another custom of Chanukah based on this idea. And then there's another custom of Chanukah, and that is giving Chanukah geld, which is Chanukah money, or Chanukah gift to our children and to others. Why? So this is controversial. Some say it's just the influence of Christmas on Chanukah. Christmas you get gifts, and then on Chanukah you get gifts. Some say no. It's based on the custom that is Jewish, give money. Why money? Because money is very often represented with the gold color, it's gold. The menorah in the temple was made out of gold. So to remind, just like we are reminded by the oily foods of the oil, so too we are reminded by the geld of the menorah, and therefore we give money, we give geld. Now, money has been translated to gifts. Now, we give money, we give gifts, because the IRS is on our head, and we don't want to be off the books. So we give gifts instead of, and I don't know why, but we give, that's where it comes from. But that's the Jewish side of looking at geld and looking at gift or color. Anyway, these are the customs. Let's go now to the three major life lessons that Chanukah has to teach us. And the first life lesson really is based on the question I have for each and every one of you today. Think about this. We are celebrating 8 days of Chanukah. Why? Because the jar of olive oil lasted for 8 days, right? Instead of lasting for 1 day. But the miracle itself was for 7 days, because it was supposed to last for 1 day, right? So while we celebrate Chanukah for 8 days, when we should be celebrating Chanukah for 7 days, because the miracle itself was for 7 days. It was supposed, remember, it was supposed to last for 1 day. So we shouldn't count that as Chanukah. That's normal, it's natural. The miracle itself was for 7 days. So why celebrate for 8 days? I understand we want an extra day of donuts and sponges and things like that. But still, there must be a reason to it. Does anyone have an idea? Anyone? Guess. Anything. There's no wrong answer. Oh, the bottle itself. Oh, the battle lasted 5 days. No, the battle lasted like 3 years. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, we could have a 3-year Chanukah celebration. That would be nice. Yes, Hannah.
Well, to me, it's the 8 days because the first day they had the oil, but it's the same oil, which was 8 days.
Fine, but the first day was supposed to last for a day.
It's 8 like an important day.
So okay, so the Kabbalists will come and tell you, good. Kabbalists will come and tell you that 8 really represents infinity. 7 is a number that represents this world and its limits. That's why we have 7 days of the week. 8 is a number that represents the metaphysical, that which is infinite. In fact, it's interesting because in mathematics, the symbol for infinity is an 8, right? It's lying down. And that is, it comes to represent our connection with God that is indeed infinite. And the miracle of Chanukah, that as much as we think may have been natural, through a natural victory of a natural army, it was really metaphysical. It was miraculous. It came from the infinite. And therefore we celebrate 8 days of Chanukah. That's the Kabbalistic approach. Yes, please, no. I'd like to hear it on the 1 jar. So, okay, good. Very good. Very, very good. Thank you. This is it. So the other reason we celebrate Chanukah for 8 days, not 7 days, is because it is a miracle in and of itself that the Maccabees were able not just to fight this war and win it against all odds. And by the way, you should know that Maccabee strategies are still used until today at West Point. And they fought a brilliant military battle. In fact, I think someone sent me an email with a statue of Judah the Maccabee at the entrance of West Point or one of the military schools. Does anyone know about this? But anyway, the Maccabees are celebrated, and it's great. Hello. That's fine. No problem. No, why? Okay. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Someone up to the kids too. Thank you. So they celebrate when Judah the Maccabee until today because of these brilliant military victories and strategies. One of the strategies, I won't get too impressed because I want to get to your point, was that they used to stand, because of course, right, there were very few Maccabees versus very many Greeks. How could they overcome such a powerful and mighty army? They would stand on mountaintops and wait for Greek armies to parade in the valleys. And then they would attack them from mountaintops, and then they could not, of course, fight back. You can fight back someone that's on top of you. So that's one of the ways they would work. They had many other strategies. But in any case, we are not just celebrating the 7-day miracle, but that first day really stands for Judah and the Maccabees all together, their indelible spirit, their resilience. And when they faced a Greek army that was mightier than them, they weren't afraid. And when they faced a temple after the victory that was as chaotic as could be, I won't go into the details of what they did to the temple in Jerusalem, but here are some of them. I won't go into all of the details, but here are some of them. They filled the temple not just with the idol of Zeus, as we read. They filled the temple with prostitutes. They would sacrifice children, and again, I'm not going to go into details, in the Holy of Holies, on the Holy Ark, in the Holy of Holies. So there was blood everywhere of innocent children. There was desecration to its fullest. But they came into the temple. And by the way, when you buy a house, if you're in real estate, you know that if you come into a house and it's destroyed, you might get a good real estate deal. And if you buy it, then most people will just destroy it and build a new one, right? Especially if the damage is deep. They could have done the same. They could have said, whoa, look at this temple. Let's just destroy it and build a new one. Would have been much easier, probably much cheaper. But to go and clean it and then to find a jar of olive oil that's sealed and rededicate the temple, who would have had the strength, the courage of spirit, the faith to do that? The Maccabees did. And that's what we're celebrating in Chanukah. That's what this first day stands for. To remind us too, that when we face our own little challenges in life, without that resilience, we'll never be able to overcome that. In the words of one of the great Hasidic Jews who lived until 30 years ago, his name was Mendel Futterpach. We've quoted him many times. He was in the Gulag for 20 years. He suffered horrendously just because he was a Jew in the Soviet Union. And he would say as follows: if you lost your money, you haven't lost anything, because money comes, money goes. If you've lost your health, you've lost something, because you're not the same person as you were before. But if you've lost your resilience, you've lost it all. And that's what Chanukah really stands for, the resilience of the Jewish people. And I think that's what all great heroes, both in Jewish history and in other places and departments, have had in common. No life is smooth sailing, but the heroes among us were able to face each and every challenge with the same resilience, knowing that nothing is impossible. And even in impossible, in the word impossible, there are two words: I'm possible. Rabbi Akiva and the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and so many others. And if you want to go to the secular world, I can name you 1,000 examples, from Albert Einstein, who was told too slow in school, to the Beatles, who were told that they have no future in the music industry, to Oprah Winfrey, who was told that she wouldn't fit into the TV screen, and therefore she has no future in the TV industry, to Steve Jobs, who was fired from his own board at Apple, to Tom Brady, who was undrafted, Michael Jordan, who was kicked out of his high school team twice, and the examples go on and on. What did they have all in common? This Maccabee spirit. And this is what we ought to teach ourselves and teach our children, because that has been the Jewish way, and that's been, I believe, the secret of Jewish survival. That's lesson number one. Lesson number two, let's just go to page 3 here. Does anyone want to read the reference at the top of page 3? Because it speaks of a lesson we can learn from the dreidel. He doesn't have any. Okay. We do? Oh. Thank you. Okay, a lesson from the dreidel. Does anyone want to read the top reference? Please go for it.
The dreidel, known in Hebrew as the Sevivon, dates back to the time of the Greek Syrian war over the Holy Land. which set off the Maccabean revolt that culminated in the Chanukah miracle. Learning Torah was outlawed by the enemy, a crime punishable by death. The Jewish children restored to hiding in caves in order to study. If a Greek patrol would approach, the children would pull out the caps and pretended to be playing a game.
Right. So that's the game of the dreidel. But my question to you is this, and that's where we learn lesson number 2. Is it really healthy to teach our children the game of the dreidel? I mean, the game of the dreidel at the end of the day is gambling, right? So is it good to teach our children to gamble? And we celebrate it, we sit together, we make a big deal out of it, really? Judaism is for gambling, it's against the Torah. The Torah has very explicit instructions against gambling. So, what is this all about? Couldn't we have found another game? Something else?
Well, they wanted to emphasize the miracle. That's why,
To emphasize it in different ways. Go out to the forest, go and learn Torah in groups as they did in hiding. Why play the dreidel?
Weren't they, you were saying, they were studying Torah and they were in a little area.
Right.
It's something small, just pull out.
That's right, the dreidel, right. Fine, so celebrate that and take the dreidel element out of the picture because it's gambling. Yes. Let's see if you have something.
Society back then, and that
Gambling was okay then, but it was never okay for Jews. It was never okay for Jews, maybe back then.
because the spies were there, they think that, oh, they need to be whatever.
Right. Could be. It could be. Fine. I said no answer is wrong. So it's very obvious. Something to do with the spinning. Maybe the letters are meaningful because the letters around the four sides of the dreidel, right? Unless they hold the last sound or airport or initial great room for what's there for you. Yes.
Well, I don't know if this is the answer, but you can hardly imagine being a parent with these young children and trying to keep the fear level down and not spread that horrible anxiety that if they were taught what would happen to them, and a lot of children just having fun. And I mean, I just think that was also very great.
Right. It's gonna be also an emotional healing exercise.
Yeah.
Very good. So that's what we do. We celebrate the emotional healing side of it. I like that too. Very good. So I'm going to go mystical, and we're going to read now the next reference. Really speaks of the mystical perspective of the dreidel and when we keep it alive. But I will preface this by saying that the dreidel really teaches us to let go. And what I mean by letting go is not just letting go of the negativities, but letting go, most importantly, of our control. Because very often in life, we think that we're in control. And if we lose that control, oi vey boy, as they say, we go crazy. Frustration kicks in, depression kicks in, and then all sorts of other terrible negative things happen from that point on. And yet God is teaching us that not everything is under our control. There is your plan, as we've said so many times when we start the day, but there's another plan simultaneously. And that's God's plan. And very often they don't go together. Our plan is not as smooth as we thought it was. We're stuck in traffic. The doctor at his office makes us wait for 2 hours before he lets us in. Or worse things happen. The question is if we are going to be open to God's plan each and every day, even though it does not synchronize with our plan. And this is what God is telling us through the dreidel. The dreidel is a gambling game, yes, but it's to open ourselves up to this higher sphere, to this higher dimension, to this higher plan that was meant for us, so that we can understand that what happens to us happens for us, not just to us. And once we learn to embrace that, then our lives can really be meaningful and can really be wholesome. Then those two plans can really harmonize together. And this is what Rabbi Shlomo Zalman of Liadi is saying here. Does anyone want to read the next reference? There are many goals and opportunities. Anyone? Will you go for it?
There are many goals and opportunities in life we can and must assess by preparing for them, by wanting them, working for them, fighting for them, and laboring to achieve them. But then there are opportunities that you can never access through your consciousness, either inspirations and dreams. In fact, the only way you can prepare for them is by losing your consciousness. Only because your ego and the scope of life do not interfere. Would you create the space that allows these streets, opportunities, and your life?
Right. And it is our ego very often indeed that blocks us from seeing that greater plan and seeing really the messages and the blessing of that greater plan. I think I shared this with you, and if I did, you can feel free to stop me. But a few months ago, I was in Israel, and I went to an institution called Chanukah, which is the leading institution for children with disabilities in the world, not just in Israel, but in the world. It was started by this lovely couple, the Samuel's family, Mr. and Mrs. Samuels, who are originally from Toronto, who had a child who was unfortunately given a faulted vaccine, and he became crippled, deaf, and blind. And most of her friends, Mrs. Samuel's friends, told her, just give up this child. It'll never amount to anything. She said, no, I'm keeping him. She prayed to God, and she said, God, if you give me the strength to attend to this child, I can see some improvement in this child, I'll open an establishment that will attend to children like this, which she did. Her child today, his name is Yossi, he's 43 years old. Yossi has touched thousands and thousands of hearts across the world. People said he could not swim. He swims today every day. People would say he could never communicate. He doesn't know what's happening on the outside. He communicates beautifully with people, and he even plays an instrument. I think he plays the flute. People said he'll never amount to any intellectual achievement, and he writes. I don't know how exactly, but he writes many essays. We can Google them that are just brilliant. He's met, I think, 3 or 4 US presidents and touched them too. He has transformed the world in so many beautiful ways. But if you go to the Shalva Institute, not only may you have the luck and merit to meet this Yossi, who's truly an inspiring Jew, but you also have the new building itself that is so deeply, profoundly inspiring, and it carries this exact message. This building, the theme of the building is the theme of the butterfly. Why? Because they tell you that very often we, others that we know, are like caterpillars, and we think that they're very limited because caterpillars are limited. They can't fly, and they're slow, and look so nice. But if you have some patience, and if you have some love, and if you have some faith, you'll see very quickly that the caterpillar will become a butterfly. All you have to do is nurture, nurture, and nurture. This is exactly what they do. So the theme of the building is the butterfly. But then if you go around the building, there's quotes everywhere, very inspiring. But from the lobby, from the entrance lobby to the first floor, there's a staircase. And on each and every stair, there are quotes. On each and every one of every 2 or 3 stairs, there are quotes. One of these quotes is a quote that is related to this and has really made a deep impact on me. And the quote is as follows: you do not need to see the entire staircase in order to be able to take the next step. You do not need to see the entire staircase in order to be able to take the next step. Very often in life, we want to be in control. We want to know what the destination is. We want to know the big plan is. We want to know that we have control of every single outcome. We want to see the entire staircase. But yet God comes and tells us the game of life is the game of the dreidel. You can't see, most of the time, you can't see the entire staircase. But I do expect you, God tells us, to take the next step. Do what you need to do. I'll come in with my plan and complete the staircase for you. But you take that next step. This is exactly what the dreidel really symbolizes. Our duty to do what we can do, but at the same time, know that God is doing what he can do too. And when those 2 plans come together, when we accept for them to come together, then we'll see that there's a beautiful tapestry to life that we may have not seen if we have remained control freaks, to say the least. Okay, that's lesson 2. Lesson 3. Lesson 3 comes from the donuts, all these oily foods, the sphinges too. Maybe you'll make us some sphinges next time. Thank you. All right. But who wants to read here the next reference? Introduction on Chanukah oily foods. Anyone? Please.
where the miraculous is provided, will for the temple 8 years. It is a Jewish tradition to use foods that reflect the significance of the holiday, such as matzah on Passover, apples dipped in honey on Rosh Hashanah, Chanukah on Thanksgiving. For at least the last 1,000 years, Jews have traditionally eaten oily foods.
Right, thank you. So that's one reason we eat oily food, to remind us of the small jug of oil that was miraculously found and lived and lasted for 8 days. But there's a deeper reason. And that is that if you think about this, oil doesn't mix with any other liquid. Oil does not only mix with any other liquids, but oil remains afloat. Right? It stays on top. To remind us also of how we ought to be in life. As we fight those challenges in life, like the Maccabees, with an indelible spirit, and as we have the great faith in God that His plan will indeed complete our plan, we also have to remember that we are souls. We are not just bodies. That we come from heaven. We are not made of this earth. That we do not mix with the worldly stuff around us. That's not who we are. We are true souls, true pieces of God here on earth. Or as my rabbi would often say, we are not human beings experiencing divine experiences. We are divine beings experiencing human experiences. So we have to remember that we are divine beings. That's who we are. And therefore, we always should remain afloat, like the oil. We have to be engaged in the world, but we can't become a part of it. And in that, herein, lies the secret of the Jew. I'll never forget that when Rabbi Steinsaltz was facing a group, my beloved rabbi was facing a group of Russian immigrants shortly after, I was 1995, I was a young teenager then. But he was facing a group of Soviet Jews who unfortunately were completely detached from anything Jewish, because Soviets would kill you or would send you to the Gulag in Siberia, who knows where, if you were caught practicing Judaism. They were really fully detached. And he told them the story of the eagle. Beautiful, cute story, but it's a story that speaks to the message of the oil. He says to them, one day, there was an eagle who came to have many babies, eggs first. And he had this big nest, but unfortunately it wasn't big enough. One of the eggs that he had dropped to the bottom of the tree. And when it dropped to the bottom of the tree, the egg was left deserted. The egg eventually hatched, and there came out an eagle. That eagle, though, was looking for his family. And not far away, there were a few ducks. So he said to himself, that probably is my family. And he went and he looked at the ducks. But the ducks never really accepted him, because he looked a little bit different. He behaved a little differently. But he was sure that he was a duck for the rest of his childhood. And he looked like a duck, and he walked like a duck, and he talked like a duck. And he still saw himself as a duck. Until one day he looks up to the heavens. Ducks don't usually look up to the heavens, but he looked up to the heavens. And there he saw an eagle soaring. He said this, I could see that bird looks like me much more than those ducks look. Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm not a duck. And he started exploring the heavens more and more, and he saw more and more eagles. And he said, well, if they can fly, maybe I can fly. And he discovered that he had wings that could make him fly. And he started to fly. And very soon he started to soar to the heavens. And very soon he started to join his real family. And very soon they accepted him as his real family. And then very soon he re-embraced himself and looked at himself as who he truly was, an eagle, not a duck. And he was telling the Soviet Jews that the Soviets may have told you that you're a duck, but you are already eagles that can soar to the heavens. How can we find out about your own egoism, so to speak? Look up to the heavens from time to time. The more you look up to the heavens, the more you realize who you truly are. You are heaven. You are divine soul. And by accepting that, then you'll also be living the purpose for which you were created, to be divine and to transform this world into a divine place. But that's really the idea of the oil. We're not ducks, we're eagles. We come from the heavens. We're always afloat. We're not part of this world. And our duty is really to impact from above the world that is below.